What a treat. I try to, believe it or not, I actually do strategize with Spaghetti about when we should try to get certain guests. And we like to not just talk with randos. We like to talk with people we know, known entities. You know, I'm a pedigree snob after all, and the highest pedigree fellow we know, and one of the great friends of -3 here. He's the Mick man, Coley, one of our favorite writers. Like we say, one of our favorite guys, and a great time to talk to him right now. While his Celtics are battling for, I forget what the name of that trophy is, the O'Brien trophy, the Larry O trophy. Here he is, everybody. It's the McMahon himself from Barstool. What's the poop, fella? How are you?
What I didn't actually realize, and always a pleasure to be here, but what I don't think I realized until I saw some pictures of it, the NBA trophy used to just be a smaller Stanley Cup. Did you know this?
No, is that right?
It was I believe it was the Walter Brown. And it was just a smaller cup, and it was the same tradition and everything. They just passed it from team to team. I'm thrilled. I love the Stanley Cup. I think it's easily the best looking trophy, but you can't just steal another league's thing. That's no good.
No, indeed. And the NBA stole my idea that I pushed hard, legitimately. I took it as high as I could take it, to the front offices in New York City of the NFL, and implored them. Nobody knows who won the MVP in the NFL, aka the most popular sport in our society. Nobody knows who won it 5 years ago, but everybody can tell you who won the Heisman Trophy. The Heisman, of course, honor, it's a kind of irrelevant award, but you know who won it because it's a cool trophy with a cool name. I said, name the MVP trophy after, I don't know, and you could have a year's worth of content on as a side note of all the 32 fan bases submitting their legend. Obviously, Patriots would submit Tom Brady. In the end, it would be the Peyton Manning MVP award. That would be way cooler with a cool pose and everything else. Who would you nominate, by the way, from the world of pro football, not Tom Brady, to be the MVP trophy? Because now the NBA has that. They have They have the Koozie trophy.
The NBA's introduced like 7 new trophies in the last 2 years, so it's getting really hard to keep track of what the NBA has done. I do love this idea for the NFL. I'm trying to think, because the more you go back, the more nefarious these players were.
Exactly. Right. They're one. Right. That's part of the game, is that you can't, like Ray Lewis. I've asked a bunch of pro football players this question, and way too many say Ray Lewis. And I say, well, that would be problematic for all of time if you had Ray Lewis as the MVP trophy. But I get the spirit of where they're coming from. I think it ultimately would land on Peyton Manning.
I do a podcast with Arian Foster now, and thinking of like the guys he's always talking about and just guys I've talked to over the years, I think it might be Barry Sanders.
That's a pretty good one. You know what? One Levy and Bell volunteered that name to me, Barry Sanders, doing the dead leg. You know, that's because that's also part of the thing. It's got to be like,
the part of it. Yeah. If you're not going to, you can't just, again, like we were just saying with the NBA stealing the NHL's trophy, you can't just 1-to-1 the Heisman trophy. But Sanders had enough. The only other person I can think is like that Moss, Randy Moss just mossing someone. That would be the only other one that would be a cool enough trophy.
The Patriots, right. The Patriots catch that he made in the end zone. I think it was against the Dolphins where he fingertips it in stride. I've seen that volunteered as an idea. Anyway, as we're talking about trophies and rooting interests and everything else, we've got Eddie Spaghetti here. You know, he's a Rangers fan. And he's living and dying with every one of these games every 48 hours or so. Do you think it's philosophically right? You're a Northeast guy. Are you rooting for, he doesn't like it when you call him Rags, by the way, so don't call him the Rags, whatever you do. But do you think it's right to root for the Rags to win the cup because you know their fans are diehards, or because New York City is your rival city, are you rooting for anyone but them, and in this case, the Tampa Bay Lightning?
Boston, New York is so fascinating to me from a sports perspective because I truly only despise one of those teams. The Jets are an afterthought. The Knicks are barely competent enough to be called a professional basketball franchise. The Nets are New Jersey's team, as far as I'm still concerned. I'm not the biggest hockey guy, so it's not like I have some like Islanders or Rangers hatred in my heart. And then the Giants, there's nothing I can say to the Giants because we haven't beaten them when it's mattered. So it's like they annoy me, but do I hate them? Not necessarily. So it's really just the Yankees I truly hate. So yeah, the Rangers winning it. I'm just tired of hearing about like when was the last time they won? Was it 92? Something like
94,
that? Like,
right?
94, yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah, it was during the OJ chase, wasn't it?
That would have been right in that window. Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, I'm just tired of hearing about 94. I like a lot of people are tired of hearing about the Celtics talk about 2008 as if they won 4 in a row. Like I'm tired about hearing about 94 too. So let's just update these years. That's all I'm looking for.
I find myself lately in a position where I'm counseling fellow fans, and your input on this would be appreciated. Should Milwaukee Bucks fans be rooting for the Celtics to win the title now? Should Heat fans be rooting for the Celtics, or should they be rooting for the Dubs to inflict pain on the team that just inflicted pain upon you?
It's fascinating because like as a Celtics fan, it always used to make me feel slightly better when the team that beat us won it all, because it's like, yeah, well, we basically lost the finals regardless of what round it happened, and we lost to the champions, so it's not much different. Yeah, it happened in the second round, but we just ran into the buzzsaw. I don't see Milwaukee or Heat fans being like huge Celtics supporters right now. Even Eddie before the show, he was like, I've heard this sentiment from a lot of people, like this Celtics team is very easy to root for despite the fact that they're from Boston. They've been able to disassociate that. But I don't think the teams we just beat view it in the same light. Like there's certainly no Nets fans to begin with, but the ones that there are, they're not big Celtics guys at the moment. The Bucks and Heat series are also just so physical. I think that has a part to play in it too. If it's a physical series, I don't think you come out of it being like, man, I really love and respect that team.
I remember as a very little kid watching with my old man, the Sixers put the finishing touches on this on the Celts in Boston Garden on their way to the finals to play the Lakers, and that rivalry, the Lakers and Celts, was just at its very beginning, and yet, or at least in the '80s version of it was, and yet Boston Garden, I remember getting caught up in it and thinking it was cool in the moment. They were chanting, beat LA, beat LA. And now I feel like it's a little bit like how the locals on Christmas Day, when Balboa and Drago were having their bout to make good on the senseless it was a murder that happened. I mean, Creed showed up for an exhibition and Drago just, he manslaughter at minimum. I'm not here to have a legal conversation with you. But my point is, they're all into Drago until Balboa lands a couple, and all of a sudden they start cheering for Balboa. It made no sense. I almost feel like in hindsight, were Boston fans wrong to be chanting beat LA? How say you?
No, because that was the beginning of Bird Magic. We weren't going to root for LA to beat Philly. It's not like we were. Dr. J, not exactly a local kid, did play at UMass somehow, some way. He ended up at UMass.
Okay. That's a rationalization, but that does work. I'll accept that. But yeah, interesting.
It would be like I talked about this recently, and it's slightly different. But there were Red Sox fans who were rooting for the Yankees over the Diamondbacks in 2001. That's never sat right with me. I get why. I get what had happened in the previous months. You don't just start rooting for the Yankees. That's why the Yankees lost, because there were so many Red Sox fans. We hadn't won at that point. That was 83 years at that point with no World Series. We rubbed off some loserdom onto them. They really haven't recovered since that. They've only won once in those 21 years since we rooted for them that one time. You can't be rooting for your absolute rival under any circumstances. You just can't do it.
Yeah, and I'm all about provincial, regional pride. So it gets murky, like you're Boston, but Northeast, and this is where real sports fans live. So you should kind of be rooting against, let's say, anybody playing in the Tampa, St. Pete area of Florida. It's kind of in the same way, New York versus Arizona. At least the Northeast wins, but I think it's ultimately wrong to be rooting for your archest of rivals.
That feels very college football, like Big Cat posting what the Big Ten's doing in bowl season. Like, I'm
not familiar with that name, Big Cat.
Yeah,
yeah.
Dan Cat, the mustache fella.
I don't like that. I am 100% against that. Rooting for your conference is so weird and sad. I want the Big Ten. No. If my team, which it does generally lose in football, the Indiana Hoosiers, I'm not going to turn around and root for the teams that just tormented me to do well. I want them to suffer just like they made me suffer.
Right. And I know Big Cat's doing it as a joke against SEC people because they're the worst at it.
I get
and these are people, they'll go burn down an entire forest if it happens to be in the wrong town. And then all of a sudden bowl season, and now you care that Auburn beat Arizona State. Like, well, why would that matter?
Coley, it means more. It just means more. When are you gonna get the idea? All right. Don't want to hold you up too long. Lots going on in Coley's life right now with the Celts and beyond in the game of life. Want to talk about Mac Jones, fresh produce, animated cinema. But first, let's talk about the matter at hand. The Celts, the Dubs, tied at 1. I'm guessing you're feeling pretty good. But to me, this Draymond Green thing is just really weird. And I guess it's been sitting there for some time, but watching game 2, I have no rooting it. Good for my old man. He's, he watched the Celts back in the 60s, used to go and buy tickets to the Garden and watch Bill Russell and company. So rooting for him, and you make the Celts likable, and our pal Hench and is also a great Celts fan. But by the way, I do want to say Coley is the guy to follow, and he will make you against your better judgment, kind of like the Celtics, because you are funny. How much
about Jaylen Brown do you know against your own will because of me?
I do think it's funny that watching the Strus replay of was he or wasn't he on the line. I don't know if he was or not, but Jaylen Brown is the one guy who, if they're going through the game video, like the Zapruder film, and breaking it down by frame, like they could go back and call Jaylen Brown for traveling about 12 or 15 times a game. Yes.
If they went back, they would see a lot of hacks that caused those travels.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize. But what do you, in this, for real, what's right here? I don't know if you can't be biased about this, but I don't have a particular rooting interest in this series, but Draymond Green has a tech, and then he falls over purposely. Jaylen Brown falls backwards over. And even if you give him the benefit of the doubt, he thought that he was going to hit another grown man's body. And when it wasn't there, it caused him to collapse onto the aforementioned Jaylen Brown. But then when he's on the ground, he tries to, he kind of like, he puts his foot on a grown man's head. Mm-hmm. Then he tries to pull himself up by Brown's shorts. Then he shoves him in the back, not hard.
No,
but it's a technical foul in any situation, except that he's already got a technical, and so the officials know, well, we can't tee up Draymond for what reason I'm not exactly sure, but Draymond knows that they can't tee him up there, so he does it. How say you, and how to make sense of this going forward?
Well, they keep Steve Javie in that bunker hostage 12 months a year so that he can chime in on these situations. And he was like, "Yeah, listen,
some bread. They give him some stale bread and hair gel. That's all he gets."
Yeah, he was like, "Listen, he's already got a tech. What are they supposed to do? Give him another one?" Yes, that's what that's for. That's why these rules are written. But that's Draymond as just a pure basketball fan. That's what he does. That's why he is as regarded as he is. From the opening tip, he tied up Al Horford on the opening possession, just being aggressive. He set the tone immediately. He was playing defensive end during that game. He was running through offensive linemen. He was on the ground on top of someone else for half the game. The Draymond play doesn't even bother me as much as the Jordan Poole play, where he just tackled Derek White and everyone was saying he was guarding his face. You don't guard your face by putting your arms up. Like you would cover your face. Like they stopped a fast break to call a technical foul, and then they reviewed it and said there wasn't even a regular foul. He tackled a man. That's a foul. I don't care if you want to call it a tech or not. You just stopped the play. We didn't get any points on the ensuing possession. So you took points off the board for what was an obvious tech in real time. Then when you slow it down in slow motion, you go, was it really that bad? I feel like we've talked about this before. I'm okay with replays. Slow motion needs to be banned. Slow motion is not the way in which we view the game. You can see anything in slow motion if you look.
It's absolutely right. Yeah, but I mean, then it's really getting murky though, because like if my problem with the review is the length of time it takes. That, I mean, you should be able to do it in almost real time. As much if you watch sports as faithfully as we do, you know the correct call after seeing 2 replays, right? Why does it take the professionals 8 minutes to determine the call? That's why it's so unsatisfying, I think. I hear you. If you do frame by frame, you can see a wide receiver on the sidelines. The ball moves a little bit. You could theoretically undermine the entire sport doing that. But I think the worst thing is, you say you're not a hockey fan, and I know it, but the Campbell Conference got wrapped up on Wednesday night. And so it's an overtime goal. It should be a great moment, but it's like, wait. The goalie is saying it's a high stick. So wait, no celebrating. And 6 minutes later, we're like, so did they move on to the final? Did they finally overcome this mountain that the Colorado Avalanche couldn't vanquish for years and years? They finally got over, but like, wait, no celebration. It kind of steals from the visceral pleasure, don't you? I mean, that's kind of should be a consideration for the networks, for the leagues, and otherwise. How say you?
Game 1 of this playoff run for the Celtics, Tatum hits that ridiculous spinning layup over Kyrie, and everyone just has to stop because they have to stare to see if there's 0.1 seconds left on the clock where you can't even get a shot off. The Super Bowl, the Patriots come back against the Falcons. James White scores the game-winning touchdown, and Julian Edelman's yelling at everyone to get back on the sideline and almost swings on, it was Brady or Belichick, who was coming over to say, the review's over. And he was just like, nope, don't believe you. And it's like, this is ruining a lot of great moments. If you see something after the fact, of course you have to finish the game, but you have to stop everything to do that? I don't think so.
Who's my guy? I can't think of his name. The lacrosse player, Chris, the wide receiver for Chris Hogan, right? Chris Hogan running off the field after that and celebrating and throwing his helmet off. In that moment, my only thought was, I can't believe I knew the Patriots were going to score when they won the coin flip, you knew the game was over in overtime, but him throwing his helmet off and running away, I was like, this is going to be an all-time moment when he has to put his helmet back on because they're going to reverse this call. But that does kind of stink, but all right. So going forward now, you have 5 games left now back in whatever they call it, not the Garden. How are you feeling now? Am I reading it right? That it's despite what Mark Jones, the play-by-play guy, keeps saying, he's insisting, he's like, gotta be concerned. The Celtics are playing well. They're 1 game up, and in the first half they have a lead in San Francisco. And Mark Jones says things are going well for the Celtics, but you gotta be concerned because Jason Tatum hasn't been really scoring yet. Like, no. I think that's overly pessimistic. The Celtics are up a game, and they have the lead, and Tatum hasn't gotten on a roll yet. That should scare Golden State. How say you?
Yeah, I agree. And he did get going. I think he hit like 5 of 7 threes last game, something along those lines. But I'd argue he even played a worse game after game 1, even though he was scoring more. The ball wasn't moving. And we fall into these ruts. It's been for years, and it really sticks out this year when we're playing well, where we just play iso ball for absolutely no reason whatsoever. And it's so much easier to defend. Every team in the NBA at the end of a game, at the end of a quarter, at the end of a half, it becomes the easiest defense to play because you know there's not going to be any passing. The best player on the other team is just going to dribble until there's 3 seconds left on the clock and then make his move. I have no idea. Whatever coach, there's going to be more coaching hires this summer. Whatever coach goes into his interviews and just says, we're not going to do that anymore, he's going to revolutionize the sport, and it's going to get a lot of credit. And 2-for-1s, jacking up a bad shot so then you can take another bad shot at the end of a quarter or a half. I don't understand any of these things. So when we play iso ball, which happened for pretty much all of game 2, yeah, it made it really difficult for us to score. We fell into these problems against Miami when Jalen was trying to unclog the offense and drive and just kept turning the ball over. We saw that again game 2, not with Jalen, with everybody. I think coming back home, we'll see the ball move more. Al Horford will get more than 3 shots in the game. Marcus Smart will be more involved. I'm not terribly worried. I feel like game 2 was kind of Golden State emptying the tank. They brought out every trick they have. They have another trick, which is Klay Thompson hitting shots. But I also don't know if that's just going to happen. I'm sure it will happen one game. I don't think it's going to be happening consistently. When I watch these teams, like the Celtics are the more athletic, they're the bigger team. Having both of those is a huge advantage. I keep hearing the Celtics won't keep hitting open shots. Like, they're NBA players. I assume they will keep hitting open shots if Golden State's rotations continue to be slow. You don't have to worry about Golden State's rotations, though, if you're not passing the ball, which was part of the problem in game 2. Ime Udoka, every time we fuck up like we have in these playoffs, he comes back with this team firing on all cylinders. I have no reason but to believe in him at this point.
I agree with you. And, you can point at Al Horford's performance in game 1 as anomalous, and that was an all-time weirdo performance. I mean, just couldn't miss. Al Horford at this age. But I'm with you completely. And I know that your guy, Jaylen Brown, is the number 2 in Boston, but it feels to me like with Klay Thompson, and you could see this coming a mile away. This is what I said in advance, so I have to self-validate. In advance of the series, it was like Klay Thompson is not Klay Thompson of 3 or 4 years ago. So, the Celtics are going to really make Steph Curry work. And then that means Poole and Wiggins have to salvage things for the Dubs. And at this point, 3 more times out of 5 games. You betting on that to happen versus the Celtics coming through and continuing to hit shots? I just, as much as you can read, Marcus Smart and guys like that, I have more confidence in those guys than I do in Wiggins and Poole. How say you? Sounds like you agree with me.
Yeah, I mean, Jordan Poole can be he's like a souped up version of Jordan Clarkson. Like, when Jordan Clarkson gets going for the Jazz, it's like, I really wish we didn't have to deal with this. And Jordan Clarkson does not have the luxury of playing next to Steph Curry, so it makes it that much worse when Poole does it. I haven't been overly impressed with Poole this series. I'm starting to agree with John Moran. I think this guy is maybe the dirtiest player in the league right now after what I've seen him do through 2 games. Obviously, he's very talented offensively. Defensively, we haven't attacked him as much. Like that's why I'm not as concerned when I see Golden State empty the tank in game 2, and it worked. So you have to give them credit. It's not like they emptied the tank and lost by 20. Then they would probably just quit. I don't know what they would do. But I haven't seen the Celtics do everything I know they're capable of. Like, our defense in the 3rd quarter of game 2 wasn't how we typically play defense. We were dropping on Steph. We were sinking under. It's almost like Ime's saving things for later in the series so that it doesn't give Kerr time to adjust. And that's not me trying to be like, oh, Ime's so smart. I just genuinely, based on what I'm seeing and based on knowing what they're capable of, the adjustments haven't been made yet. And that doesn't make sense, other than we're saving them so that they can't figure out a counter before it's too early.
Well, like people keep talking about, the multiplicity of the Celtics playing defense. Robert Williams, his length and athleticism on getting out on a guy like Steph Curry from 3 is weird. You see in some moments it seems like, oh, Steph's going to smoke this guy. But you can also see, to my point, the different looks that Steph is getting from the Celtics defense. That's the guy who he's basically got to save the day. It's kind of funny. Like I say, Poole and Wiggins are good, but they're not dependable for 3 out of the next 5 games. I think it all amounts to this. Jason Tatum's is gonna turn it on. That should be good news for the Celtics, unless you tell me you think he has a legitimate injury to worry about. And is he the MVP, or do you think if the Celtics win it, that Jaylen Brown might end up stealing that award? It obviously comes down to those 2 guys.
Yeah, I mean, right now I think Jalen's the front runner. Game 1 was won by Jalen. I know Al had a great game shooting. Jalen scored on, I think it was like, or scored or assisted on 14 straight points to mount that comeback. And then game 2, I think it was 22-9 in the early goings. Obviously, it's the first quarter. You can't say the game's over, but Jalen wasn't missing. He was hitting pull-up threes. He had 9 points immediately. And then they call that phantom foul against Gary Payton II on that layup that he just missed. And he missed it so point blank. They assumed a foul had to have happened. How do you feel about the NBA challenges? Do you think it's great that when you challenge and win, you don't get another one? I understand we don't want to be sitting here watching reviews all day, but in the first quarter, that second foul, you have to sit your hottest guy until the second quarter, and you can't challenge it because you know that's your only one. Like what?
I get the logic of why you can't have endless amounts of challenges,
but it is weird. Them, why not?
Well, right, that's exactly right. 1 and 2, it's weird for getting it right is strategy. It counts as some weird bit of strategy. I could talk about the officiating, the lousy officiating, and all that. I know. Do you? By the way, I can tell from your remarks about Jordan Poole, the playoffs are great. Hockey, to me, makes you hate human beings who are complete strangers to you for the rest of your life. Have you developed any hatred for any human being who plays pro basketball over the last handful of weeks here?
First round was Bruce Brown. People were acting like he was the second coming, and he's a local guy. He's from Massachusetts. I should love Bruce Brown. People were acting like him scoring was some great coup. We were leaving him wide open. That was the goal. We were covering Kyrie and Durant. We were like, if this guy beats us, if he can score 50, so be it. And everyone was like, man, can you believe the Celtics can't guard this guy? So I almost hate him by proxy of hating the people who just couldn't see
for the shine he got. Right. Yes.
Yeah. It was just more like people. There's a lot of players I hate because of the conversation around them and less so them themselves. But it was Bruce Brown in the first round. Second round was a combination of Wes Matthews and Pat Connaughton. I couldn't understand why Wes Matthews all of a sudden became the greatest individual defender on planet Earth, because he had Tatum looking like me out there. Like I still don't know what happened there. And Connaughton just kept hitting shot after shot after shot. The all-time upset, Grayson Allen not being hated out of that series, shocking. And then the Heat series, the Heat are weird because I kind of just hate the entire organization as a concept. Pat Riley in Boston alone is enough to hate them. And then just their whole team. Jimmy Butler, I don't find particularly likable. That goes back to draft night for Jaylen Brown, when Celtics fans booed him because he wasn't traded for Jimmy Butler to pair with Isaiah Thomas. It's almost as if Danny Ainge knew what he was doing. Jimmy Butler's on his third team since that day. So yeah, that wouldn't have worked out particularly well. Bam, I like a lot as a player. I don't understand why he has zero. Like when Karl Anthony Towns gets roasted for being soft in the post, I don't understand why that doesn't translate quite to Bam, who was getting shut down by everyone who's smaller than him. And Max Strus going 0 for 15 and then hitting all of these clutch threes, didn't care for that. And Kyle Lowry, I've never liked. So him making a mockery, a mockery of the sport out there, just flailing around. I didn't care for that one bit, Shaq.
But glass half full. He makes regular people feel like, wait, if that slob can make it in pro basketball, I got a shot too. I mean, a man of that carriage should not be out there playing point guard in the NBA. It was remarkable, really.
It's tough. Every report I've seen coming out of Miami since the playoffs ended is like, if he doesn't lose weight, Riley's not going to be happy. And it's like, well, Riley just signed him to this albatross contract. I don't really know what he's supposed to do, but he can't cut him. Like, what is he going to do? Is he going to? I don't know anyone who's demanding to acquire Kyle Lowry at this stage of his career. I don't know what they're going to do about that. They already gave him the money. He's going to work out harder now at the end of his career. That doesn't seem like a thing that's going to happen.
Maybe we should, you know what? I've said this about the 85 Bears. We need to update that reference. Like, hey, that our defense, it's always to impugn a defense like, hey, that defense ain't exactly the 85 Bears. There have been other dominant defenses since then, and the kids are sort of getting lost by that historical reference. Maybe the albatross isn't heavy enough. Maybe going forward, it should be, you got a real Kyle Lowry around your neck, because that would be heavy. Right?
Were the 85 Bears the best defense of the 80s? Like, the Giants weren't any slouch in that decade either.
Well, it's my favorite talking point, even though, or maybe because it upsets Bears fans so much. And I lived in Chicago for all the 90s and Jordan's greatness and all of that. I sincerely believe that the 85 Bears, who got smoked on Monday Night Football in the sweltering heat of Miami by Danny Marino, would have gotten smoked once again by Danny Marino on the fast track of the Superdome with the same collection of players. That was the kryptonite for what the 85 Bears do, which was a gimmicky kind of a thing that goes back to Jerry Glanville, believe it or not, in the late 70s with the Atlanta Falcons. But either way, the way to defeat that was a quick trigger passer who could get the ball and quickly throw the ball. That's how you would vanquish the 85 Bears.
You're saying Eason couldn't do that?
Dieter Brock couldn't do it in the NFC title game. Yeah, I think if Champagne Tony hadn't somehow upset Danny Marino and company down in the Orange Bowl in the AFC title game, it's one of the more pivotal upsets in pro football in the Super Bowl era. If you go back and pick that apart, and how it would have just completely undermined this heralded Chicago Bears team. They were very good. I don't mean to knock them too much. Anyhow, speaking of men of a certain carriage who don't look exactly right doing what they're doing on the professional sports field, Mac Jones. How you feeling about? Well, he's bosomy and he's hippie and everything. By the way, Mac Jones, he doesn't seem like a Mac. How say you?
He's a McCorkle.
He's a McCorkle. Why doesn't he go with that? You got the juice to make that so. Just make a whole media campaign out of Mac Jones. That name don't work for you, man. McCorkle Jones, that's something we can get behind.
I don't even think McCorkle's even his first name, if I remember.
No, it's his middle name. I mean, Mike Jones, which is kind of the most, which is kind of perfect for how vanilla he is. Mike Jones, there he is, everybody, our QB. But McCorkle Jones, now that's got some cachet.
McCorkle has like he wouldn't have went to Alabama if he went by. That's an Arkansas, and that's his ceiling. Like, he wouldn't have gotten drafted as McCorkle. He made the right call. McCorkle is tough. I hope that's that's going to be a family last name, right? There's no other explanation for how that becomes a human's middle name.
He's come through clean on the other side. He was getting votes for Rookie of the Year. He's in the big leagues now. He can be McCorkle Jones or anything else. What he really looks like is a Seth. If there were justice being served, he would be Seth.
I could see that. Yeah, I could see a Seth. And yeah, I'll never. When you say he's hippie, when he walked up after he got drafted, I was like, I was okay with the pick, and then he's taking these kind of strides. I don't know if he's gonna last. I don't like this gait on this fella.
I fear as a Steelers fan, but I really believe this could happen. How say you to this? Steelers, Chiefs, Patriots could all finish in last place in their divisions.
We still have the Jets. I'm not handing them anything. Zach Wilson.
I'm starting to think the Jets might be good. It all has to do with Zach Wilson at this point.
Yeah,
if he's halfway decent, they should be pretty good.
I've been hearing that for so long. I like Robert Saleh. I like what they've done on the defense. I think their draft was a little overrated. When you listen to people talk about the draft before the draft, they broke several cardinal sins from these draft pundits lay out. They took a running back very high for the second year in a row. They traded up to get a guy there. They were the only team to have Jermaine Johnson II in their top 10. And that's being heralded as some great steal. The whole rest of the league passed on this guy, but because the Jets of all teams traded up to get him, all of a sudden that's now some great pick. That doesn't make any sense. I do like their first two picks a lot. I like that they went corner. I like that they went receiver. Those were smart picks. The running back may work, but if I'm to listen to all this draft talk before the draft, that was a bad pick according to the draft community. But because, again, the Jets did it, it's now a good pick. That doesn't add up at all. So, yeah, until the Jets are better than us, I'm not exactly going to hand it to them. And as far as the Chiefs go, I'm not going to pick Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes behind Derek Carr and Josh McDaniels of all people. That's not what I'm about to do. Yeah, they got Devontae Adams back. Everyone keeps talking about their Fresno State connection. I don't remember seeing Fresno State hoisting up the crystal ball at the end of the college football year. I don't know why we're just banking on that.
It is very weird that I think it's cool that they're pals from way back and they committed to play together at this level, and they both have turned out to be pretty good at this level and everything else. I do think references to the numbers that they put up at Fresno State are kind of irrelevant here.
Right. Yeah, I like Devontae Adams, for sure the best wide receiver in football. Derek Carr, for sure not the best quarterback in football, so I don't know why he downgraded. Devontae Adams downgraded. He got his payday. He got his new home. I'm happy for him as a human being. In terms of football, I'm not ready to hand them the AFC West. And the Chargers. That's the team. That's the team. But they've done this for 20 years, Shek. This is what they do. Until they do it, I can't hand it to them.
The Bungles went to the Super Bowl. The world's upside down. The idea that they could, I think they're going to be really good finally. And then, by the way, yeah, they're so loaded. I don't know how they couldn't be. I am worried, not legitimately, but I do think if I were a Patriots fan, I would be kind of worried about where this is all going. The pencil guy is now going to be your offensive coordinator. Is weird. Belichick's son has way too much sway, and I just don't think Mac Jones. I think Mac Jones is fine. It's kind of like a goalie in hockey, I guess. It's kind of like I've been swayed at this point with like I'd love to have a superstar goalie who steals games, but more than anything, just don't blow the game. Just don't give up soft goals. I feel like that's what Mac Jones is. He's nice and steady. But, I mean, the idea that guy over the next decade, I think a lot of people got swept up in because he had the flying Elvis on the side of his hat. Like they just replaced Tom Brady Jr. Don't you see? He's the second coming of Brady. I don't necessarily buy that.
Yeah, second, they called him that because he was unathletic. Like that was all it was. Like he's not a great athlete. He can't throw it that far. Yeah, it's Brady 2.0. Like I like Mac Jones. I do think he is capable of winning a Super Bowl, but I also am of the mindset that quarterback has become the most overrated position in professional sports. We act like these guys are rocket scientists who are also brain surgeons. And then you've got McVay out there. I was thinking about this before coming on because I know our conversations go everywhere. Was Matt Stafford consistently a top 10 quarterback over in public perception? Was he consistently a top 10 quarterback, or was he more in that 10 to 15 range? Like we agreed he had talent, but if you were to sit there year after year and actually map out the top 10 guys, he'd be really battling for that 10th spot. It wasn't a guarantee that he was consistently in that top 10. The Rams, because of their system, because Sean McVay is a very good coach, knew, hey, I just need a marginal, not marginal, but a big enough bump from Goff to this guy. I don't need a top 3 guy necessarily. I don't even think you'd look back last year at the regular season and say Stafford was a lock for one of the top 3, maybe 4 or 5 quarterbacks in all of football. So this idea that you need one of the top guys, it's everything else. And I think that's what you saw the Patriots do. We've made marginal upgrades at receiver over the last 2 years. Brady's last year and Newton's only year, that receiving core was terrible. It's much better right now. I love our running back room. I love our offensive line anchored by first-round pick Cole Strange. I like everything about the team except for the coaching room. And it's weird to say with Belichick. It's very weird to say. I'm uneasy. I don't like change. As much as I think McDaniels is an overrated play caller, I don't like going into the second year of a rookie quarterback and having this much change. It's a lot.
Matt Patricia. I mean, who canceled? Matt Patricia is now going to be your offensive coordinator. That's bizarre. I don't think we're talking nearly enough about that. Maybe once we get past these hockey and basketball playoffs.
This is what I'm grasping on. Do we think it's true? Do we think Belichick's like, you know what? I'm going to fuck with everybody and just say that this is happening, and then come regular season, it's not even going to be close to what people are talking about today.
Yeah, it's hard because the Patriots, by all rights, like Mac, they did make the playoffs, and you thought at one point or at multiple points during the football season last year. It's like Belichick's done it again. He took
we had
one
the one
year
season
away.
in December. We had a bye in December, and then we blew that.
I don't know how. Yeah, I don't know how I would feel. I mean, listen, I'd be nice and warm with all the trophies that I got in the millennium, but going forward, I might be nervous about where exactly this is headed. It does feel like a celebrity who has too much power. It's like Bill Belichick. Nobody's told him no for way too long, and now he's like, "Yep, Matt Patricia is now the offensive coordinator." Like, what are you doing, man? You gone daft, you old man.
I thought Patricia was brought back to replace Ernie Adams, who was the guy in the back room who famously called the Malcolm Butler pick in practice earlier that week. I thought that's what Patricia was best suited for. Be in the back, just watch nothing but tape on us and our opponents. Tell us what you see. Calling balls and strikes mid-game. I don't know how I feel about that. Obviously, we saw what happened in Detroit didn't go over too well. I don't know how much blame he deserves for that. No one else has been able to crack the Detroit Lions nut either, so I don't know if I completely blame him for that. But the reports from all the players out of Detroit didn't make it seem like he was helping any. So
he seemed like a creep. They all think that as long as we just act exactly like Belichick acted, this will work, and it never works.
The only guy who it did work for, and he didn't act exactly like Belichick, was Brian Flores, who now is an open suit with the NFL. So the coaching tree keeps not looking. He's in Pittsburgh now.
That's right.
Which I think you'll enjoy a lot because Brian Flores knows what he's doing.
I don't want to, people don't need to hear me say it again, but I will say it to you very quickly as I can say anything. The number 9s at quarterback in the 21st century confuse the issue. QB wins are a thing. People get, I think analytics people, and I like analytics, have kind of warped our perception of empirical fact, and they go against small sample size in the playoffs. The entire point of every sport is who wins the trophy at the end of it. Correct. And to marginalize who does best in those situations. Of course, clutch isn't a thing. Nobody or very few people ever elevate statistically in the playoffs. The point is to maintain your level of greatness in the playoffs. Drew Brees didn't do that. Matthew Stafford didn't, to your point, he's anomalous where QB wins. Because generally speaking, if you have one of, like you say, I wouldn't go top 10, but if you have one of the top 6 or 8 in the 21st century QBs, you're going to be in the mix for the playoffs perennially. The Lions are the anomaly to that equation, but it doesn't discount the fact that, of course, the guys that play or clutch or maintain their performance in the biggest spots in the sport deserve all the praise, and QB wins are a real thing. And if you don't, but I completely hear you on Stafford. He's the one exception that kind of proves the rule to me. I do think it does matter, but I do hear you. The lines are so bad. That's a conversation for another time, by the way, is how can franchises who turn over, ownership, they turn over general manager, front office, head coaches, quarterbacks, entire rosters, and they continue to stink. It really is bizarre if you think about how are the Lions, what explains the ineptitude over decades and decades. It's really weird. Must be a real bummer. The Browns have Browns themselves once again, it seems, with Deshaun Watson. That one, you could see that one coming. And I really think he's going to end up getting a year, by the way. I think he's going to end up getting shut down for a year. I think
he's got to get more than Ridley, no?
Yeah. I think he's got, or at least as much. It's just a bad look. That's what people will say. Calvin Ridley sprinkled a little something to make the games more exciting. This guy, 24 accusations against him. He gets less. I don't see it going that way.
It's not great. Well, it's weird because the Browns, I would argue, up until this most recent move, have built as perfectly as I think you can without, I think too many teams in these positions like the Lions, they build it backwards. They build quarterback first. And the Browns famously passed on Deshaun Watson the first time. They passed on a lot of guys to get Myles Garrett, to get anchors on both sides of the ball. and they completed the whole roster except for quarterback. And then they got Baker, looked like he could be the guy. It's turned out not to be the guy.
He could have been the guy, though. You wait and see. You watch. I think he winds up in Carolina. I think he'll be fine. I don't think he's the aforementioned top half dozen or 8 QBs in the league, but he was good enough. That
right, I agree.
Middle class of QBs is pretty healthy in pro football now. I think that is going to be it's an ugly story, but it's going to be super funny watching the back and forth between the Cleveland Browns and Baker Mayfield over these next couple of months. When that suspension gets handed down and they have to tuck tail and go to Baker, like, would you give it a go for us one last time, Baker? I mean, and in most cases, the leverage that teams have over players is like, if you say no, that's going to be a bad look for you. Like, who else? What other team's going to want you if you don't have the pack? There's no other franchise. The other 31 teams are not going to be like, yeah, Bake, you really should have played there. They're going to be like, completely get it, man. They screwed you. And it's going to be delightful to watch. And if he puts the helmet on, shame the devil. He should.
Yeah, he can't.
Absolutely not.
He can't. I understand reason for some optimism behind Davis Mills, but why not Houston for Baker?
I think that makes sense too. He has said that Baker has suddenly improbably become a guy I root for, but early on in this thing, when he's like, I'm not going back to the Browns, when he said, oh, the Texans are beneath me, basically said that much. Like, all right, who do you think you are, Baker?
Yeah.
Really, where I could see, depending on how things go for Mac Jones, what Belichick and the great offensive mind that is Matt Patricia, depending on what they decide about Mac Jones, I would not be stunned if they entered the sweepstakes for Bake. I could say it seems like a thing that, well, they wouldn't do that because they already have their guy. When does Belichick do anything that you expect him to do? I could absolutely see them making a play for Bake. He seems like Belichick's kind of guy.
I understand what you're saying, but I do think Mac ticks enough boxes where Belichick's completely content with him. I think he doesn't turn the ball over. He's comfortable calling the offense. He was teaching Bill O'Brien Alabama's offense when he left. That kind of stuff matters. And Belichick, it's not that he loves distractions. He'll take on someone who will get a media circuit. We had Tebow playing H-back for us. Like, Belichick's not. He brought Hainsworth in. Like
Joe Cinco, right? You're right.
He cares about people who can play. I think if he just genuinely looked at the tape from Baker, he'd be like, no. I mean, we played him in New England last year. I was at the game. I think it was 48-6 was the final. Like, I don't think he's as just the football player. I don't think he's like all in on Baker Mayfield. But when we talk about, do I feel nervous about the Patriots? Do I feel nervous about the Celtics? All this. There's a team we already talked about, and it's something that I know you think brings great shame to the city of Boston. There's a team we already talked about that has me feeling more confident these days. It is the aforementioned Colorado Avalanche. The last time they won a cup sparked 2 decades of dominance in the great city, the actual city of champions, Dameshek. We've got a UMass guy.
Find your own nickname. City of Champions is a title that was awarded by Pittsburghers. Come up with your own thing. Green Bay is Title Town. You can't just take some. It's not a moving award. The Pittsburgh, the City of Champions is the City of Champions because it anointed itself that. Just like the Cowboys gave themselves America's team. It's jive. Obviously, the Cowboys are not America's team at large. We're the City of Champions. We earned it, by the way. Come up with your own dumb name. And by the way, the funny bipolar that basically pivots on the turn from one century to this one that we're in now. The swing in from the most pathetic fans to the fans who have been the most successful over the last 20 plus years now are in Boston, but one of the all-time disgraces that I will never let Boston fans forget. Raymond Bork. He wears your sweater. He does one of the great moves of all time. He takes off the number 7 and gives it to Phil Esposito and wears 77 for the rest of his career. That was cool. Then Raymond Bork gets traded to the Colorado Avalanche. And the state of Boston sports was so pathetic that after he wins the cup as a rental over in Denver, Colorado, You guys threw him a parade. You threw him a parade in Boston. That's pathetic. That ain't no city of champions.
But then what happened?
I don't know what happened. I'm telling you, that was embarrassing. And I want you to admit it here and now.
Listen, it was dark times. It was very dark times.
You had a parade for a guy who won a cup with another hockey town. That's weird.
Very dark times. You won't find me arguing that point. But you can't argue with the results. The results speak for themselves. Every team looked themselves in the mirror and said, we got to be better than this. We can't be celebrating Avalanche championships in our own goddamn city. And it started with Tom. And then the Red Sox got in on it. The Celtics and the Bruins have only chipped in one apiece. I'm looking for that to change. But you can't argue with what it ignited, the hunger that it ignited in this town. And right now, led by Cale Makar, Dwight Iverson, UMass's own, another Mass. We might throw him another parade if the Avalanche win. It might conflict with the Celtics parade, but I'm fine with it. They can hop on. Like we can have the Stanley Cup and the Larry O'Brien on the same float.
Listen, color me skeptical. I like your attempt to bend that shameful deed into something that galvanized this quarter century of success for Boston sports. Man, I could go on with you forever here. I really did. I have in front of me here, because I know you've been doing some great
show. You have some.
Well, I know, but I want you to focus in. You gotta listen. The Celts have toiled for months on end. The least you can do is give them your undivided attention. That's how I feel about when my teams are in the playoffs. It's fun in games in October, but once the playoffs begin, I think I owe it to Coach Tomlin and the fellas to shutter the blinds, tune out the outside noise, and give them my attention. You know, I want to talk to you about Disney movies. I know those are playing in your house quite a bit these days, the animated movies. Mm-hmm. Let's save that conversation because, you know, we're just getting into the summer blockbusters now, and I'm not sure which ones are coming out. Oh, we got a Buzz Lightyear coming out.
We sure do.
So let's save that conversation. That'll excite the audience. And I always say, you know, the Fruit of the Year award doesn't really get rolling. The race for it, the most prestigious, the granddaddy of all Shecky awards, Fruit of the Year, doesn't really start until Memorial Day. But I did see you and your pal Tyler doing your tier rankings, and I cracked wise because I said stick to sports. But I do hail you both. You did some good work. You really did
I wasn't a part of the tiering. I was just adding.
No, I know you weren't, but you reacted to it.
I will say I don't anticipate this fruit ever winning. I had my first golden kiwi the other day. And boy, oh boy, was that a treat! Sir, I don't see it standing atop any mountain anytime soon. But if that's your second receiver, you've got yourself quite a
golden kiwi. Is it in fact golden?
It is, yes.
All right, I'll give it a try. I'm not opposed to giving anything a shot. What I really appreciated was you guys both being down on the pomegranate. That's shameful fruit. I can't. It really makes me angry when I see people doing the thing. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You're bending to the pomegranate's will, cracking it and doing that whole crap. Where's your dignity?
How I've been thinking about this a lot recently, and obviously the pineapple is one of the all-time greats.
It really is. It won. There was a time, believe it or not, a lot of people, you know, Shecky historians can affirm the veracity of this. There was a time in this century
you almost retired the award.
The Fruit of the Year almost was retired because of the pineapple's dominance. And then here came my old pal, the apple. Oh, all the varietals. We can debate those till the cows come home. But there was a real moment there where the apples took a back seat to the pineapple. Mm-hmm. And thankfully the apple came along and saved the day like the cavalry. But yes, but continue with your point. I'm sorry.
My thought is I always try and go back to the beginning. How hungry was the first guy who was staring at a pineapple and said, I bet there's something in there? Because it's the most unassuming. When you look at a pineapple, it has its own defense mechanism. It's prickly. It doesn't really look, it looks like a rock of some sort. That first guy, who we owe him a great thank you as a society, but man, was that boy starving to think that had that and the coconut. Anyone who first cracked those open to think there was food inside had to have been on their last breath.
Right. It makes one aspirational. Right.
Yeah.
If you want the easy payoff, then the grape is for you. But right, if you stick with it, there's a lesson to be learned there, for the human being, and digging in a little bit. I hear you completely on that one. But then there are other ones that betray you with your diligence. Like I say, the pomegranate is for instance. Shame on you. All that work for that. The weird one to me is the coconut. You really had to work hard to get to what the coconut has to offer. And it ain't that big a payoff. Now, I like a coconut. I like a coconut cream pie. I like a coconut donut. And I like the shavings of the coconut. But you know what, though? The coconut won fruit of the year. I think it was 3 years ago because of its delicious nectar. Now, milk, I don't know if it's properly milk, but just my wife started to hand them to me. And I'm like, what the hell is this? What exotic beverage is this? She's like, it's just a coconut with a straw stuck in it. That nectar, not a lot in there, but oh boy, is it delicious. So bullish on I'm with you completely on the pineapple, but I always hail. I like to think about, like, the oyster is a crazy one too. Who cracked that thing. And then once you, like the pineapple, at least you had the visual payoff. You crack that pineapple, like, oh my God, look at what's inside of here. Look at that golden, look at that. Look at the reward we get. It's beautiful to look at once you get inside of it. When you crack the oyster and you see what's inside of it, you still eat it? You still go through with it? Oh no.
At that point.
It just filled with sea boogers. Well, I am hungry. Why would you ingest that after seeing what's in it? I also like to think about the scenario when man first realized that cooking the cow made it way more delicious. That was it like, what is the thing about accident or mistakes, or I forget the cliche about, where good things come from. But did the cow, was it standing too close to a campfire? And I don't think there were campfires, because I think by definition, if you were living, you camped and that's how you slept at night. But you had a nice fire going. Did a cow die and fall into the fire? And they're like, oh my God, the cow, wait. He smells delicious.
Yeah, you guys, how long are we keeping this on there? We want a little pink. We want a little brown. How are we doing this?
What was the best of all is wine. What the hell happened with wine? We like these grapes. Oh, look, squeeze out. You can make juice out of them, as it turns out. What happened? When did they discover, wait a second, if you put that grape juice away for several months, nay years, and then drink it, got a little bite to it, but it makes you feel funny and nice. What was that sequence?
Someone must have made some grape juice, and then they had to go on a journey or a trek of some sort. They kept it in there. They didn't have any refrigerators, so they're home, just in a corner somewhere. They came back. They were a little parched after weeks, maybe months of traveling to get some grains, whatever people did back then. They came back. They were like, boy, oh boy, could I go for a sip of some grape juice? And then they woke up 4 days later. They had no idea what happened.
But given the lack of science in that time, I think wine goes back, thousands and thousands of years. So given the absence of that, when you drank it, did they think that they had become gods? They probably didn't attribute it to the juice. They're like, I don't know what happened, but the higher power, whoever it is, I am now him. Because look at me. You can't, getting in fights and everything. I don't even feel pain anymore. I'm the chosen one.
They were out there in lightning storms arguing with God. They didn't know what was going on back there. They thought that was God coming to tell them the what for. They didn't know their ass from their elbow back then. Those people, I envy that period of time. Terrible time to be alive for. I agree with that completely. I don't see a lot of benefits. Like people say, what was better in the past than it is now? Like college basketball.
was better like 20 years ago, but pining for like 300 years or any time before that, there is nothing that was so worthwhile back then that would ever make me want to go back to that time. It does make me think, a theological question. I don't know if you're the right guy to go to with this, but maybe you are. Is it possible that maybe that the whole start of the religion was Jesus got drunk and he thought like, oh, I am the higher power?
I mean, if it wasn't him, he got his audience pretty hammered when he was
maybe that was it.
Many goblets of wine. So yeah, it definitely played a factor in at least public perception, let alone what he was believing.
The precursor to roofing. All right. Listen, so much to think about. What a journey. And we didn't even get into the animated movies. Listen, we're rooting for you. I'm rooting for my old man. And like I say, we had a conversation with Cousin Sal on Extra Points. He says it's hard to divine Celtics fans or Rags fans. Who's easier to root against right now? I feel like you kind of make the Celtics easy to root for. I can't encourage it strongly enough. Follow along with Coley on social media. He will make you against your better judgment. Kind of root for his plucky Celtics as they try to complete the title. Where does this rank for you? Would this rank for you in 21st century titles?
It might be one. I mean,
I feel like they're your favorite team. Is that right?
The Celtics are, yeah. And the Red Sox are two. So I can't call them one. 08 was so big for me. I was at the clincher with my father, very last row, backs against the wall, stood for the entire game. Even up 30 in the fourth, I was like, they could hit a couple shots here. So I was nervous until the final whistle. 04 was as close to a religious experience as I think I'll have. The Patriots had already won 2. Yeah, they had won 2. So we
sounds right.
Felt winning, but with the Red Sox, it was, everyone likes to dub this a Patriots town. Everyone over the age of 45 is not a Patriots fan. So I cannot give the people of this area like the Patriots will ever be number one. It's a Red Sox. This is Red Sox. So when 04 happened, that's when the change really felt like it was happening. But this one would probably be 2 or 3. I was actually thinking, would I have preferred the Patriots to go 19-0 or that Falcons come back? Because I don't care what you say, you can be 19-0 all you want. If you lose 35-3 to the Falcons, that's a black mark. You can't have that on your franchise forever. So would I rather have that comeback? That comeback's as iconic as it gets. Is that more iconic than, say, what is it? The 72 Dolphins went undefeated. Is that the team? Mercury right. Morris pops a bottle every year. Like, would I rather Asante Samuel in 30 years be popping bottles at every team that fails to complete it, or would I rather have the 28-3 comeback? That's been floating around in my mind recently. Which would I prefer?
I love debates like this. I think when people say, like, when people embarrass themselves and are happy that their team goes 0-16, like Lions fans and Browns fans, like, we did it, like, at what cost? I mean, that's going to last forever. You understand? You didn't win a game. You didn't win a game, for goodness sakes. That's a good one. I think you got it, but that would, and I do remember I was in the stadium for the Falcons and Patriots game. And I do remember, who was it? Robert Alford picked off Brady and is running down the sidelines, and Brady diving in vain to get Alford as he ran for the touchdown. And in that moment, you felt like, wow, the Patriots aren't going to lose. They're going to get smoked by the Atlanta Falcons. They're going to not lose. It's funny because I remember it didn't really hit home for me how bad it could get. Well, I've had the experience a couple of times with the Steelers in the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 30 against the Cowboys. Michael Irvin catches a touchdown pass and then gets called for OPI, which reverses it, but it would have made the game 21-3. And I remember feeling like, oh, sweet Jesus, what have I wished for? Now we're here and we're gonna get embarrassed like the Bills. And against the Packers in Super Bowl 45, when I think it was also 21-3 or something like that. And I remember feeling in that moment like, this is a stink that I will never wash off on the big stage. One thing to lose, to get shamed but I still think you want 19-0. That stands for all of time. There would be no question. It would rise above anything else with Deflategate and Videogate and all that stuff. It would be like, can't argue with that. They went undefeated. They ran the table. I think that one sticks with. I bet you if you ask Brady, that one bothers him more.
I would imagine so. However, 28-3 also came on the heels of the 4-game suspension from Deflate.
Yeah, right.
It's the only reason Matt Ryan won that fraudulent MVP over Brady. So that's where it adds. It's not going to be remembered historically as part of that game's narrative, but I'll never forget it. And I think it adds a little bit of, like, 19-0, of course, stands the test of time. Other teams have had comebacks. You just can't be among the ranks of the Giants and the Cowboys and your Steelers. You can't be, because we are new money. We're new money success for the Patriots. You can't start being in the old boys club. You can't be one of these blue buds if you get demolished by the Atlanta Falcons. Like, if it were the Cowboys who did that, or if it were the 49ers, sure, it's still not great. But the fact that it's the Falcons, that you can't have that. So I think the way in which it happened, the team in which it happened against, I think that's what makes it a debate.
Matt Ryan in his number 2, which he chose on purpose. That's right. Yeah, that's also embarrassing. Last thing for you, because it's a fun story to me. I asked Matt Ryan, why? You could have chosen any number from 1 all the way up to 19. Why did you choose the number 2 on purpose? And he said, because my favorite guy growing up was Tim Couch. Which I think is great, because how many human beings can rightly say that they ended up being better than their idol?
Right. And that you can't lose to a guy whose favorite guy was Tim Couch. That's another reason why that Falcons loss would have been devastating.
Number 2. Yeah. I hear you. Let me pray on that some more before I give you a final answer. Put it in pencil for now. But in the meantime, also best wishes to your Celts, and you got a nice brain. Come up with a better name. City of Champions. That's beneath you. You started out with saying you can't take somebody else's trophy, and now you are trying to take our nominal trophy. We're the City of Champions. I don't know what you want to call yourself. Winningstown. That's not my business. That's up to you.
Champsville. Well, it's interesting. Brockton has long boasted as themselves the City of Champions due to all the boxers that have come out of there.
That's right.
So it's not even the own City of Champions in our own state.
I've heard that crap too. I don't care for that. Nobody considers boxing.
One last thing, because you did bring up the Steelers and you brought up Tomlin. I'm shocked you think that him, of all people who've never finished below 500, could be a 4th place team.
Well, if Deshaun Watson's not out there, I don't think they're going to be a 4th place team. I mean,
you think the football gods will allow Deshaun Watson to have success even if he plays? That would be tough.
Well, I mean, obviously it goes without saying, but I mean, I just because Tomlin never has had a losing season doesn't mean it's it's some guaranteed birthright. He could, but if you look at the team, and I understand that you could be a better roster this year than you were last year and still wind up with a worse record than you had. Yeah. Obviously the AFC has gotten more rugged in the last 4 months than where it was but they made the playoffs. I mean, did you watch their games? They made the playoffs it's just the great, one of my all-time, people think I'm being a wiseacre. It's one of my all-time favorite Steelers seasons. It was so much fun watching them knuckleball 15-12 wins in pro football in the 21st century. Like, don't you see? It's so easy to throw the ball and score points in pro football. In the meantime, the Steelers are scratching out 9 wins against good teams, scoring in the teens. It was really funny. And that last regular season Sunday was one of the all-timers. But yeah, I mean, I'm not necessarily comfortable with the idea that in a pass first quarterback league that the strength of the team is the defense. But for what it's worth, even without Stephon Tuitt, they're loaded up on defense, and Flores and Tom. I mean, these are great defensive minds. So, I guess if nothing else, it's zigging against the league zag, and that should be a more rugged foe for offenses that are used to getting off a little more easily. They should have to deal with the knuckleball Steelers once again, just like they did last year. I don't think it's crazy to think that the Steelers are going to go 7-10 this year. And plenty of Pittsburghers think that too. Until I see the Jets do it, until I see Tomlin Steelers go 6-11 or whatever. I mean, I'm going to bet the over every time. 7.5. I mean, what evidence is there that they're going to just completely bottom out? There's very little. Did you watch Roethlisberger last year? You don't think Trubisky / Pickett are going to play at that level?
I texted you after the first round asking if the Pickett selection had anything to do with 1983. And you seem to agree that had to have played a factor, passing on Dan Marino in favor of Gabe Rivera in his 5 career games before tragedy struck.
Good for you knowing about the Mad Mex. Good for you.
Oh, of course. Senor Sack. I think that scenario played out in this draft, but it wasn't with Kenny Pickett. I think if you were going for the same storyline, a la Marino, and you remember better than I do, because I think you were the personal trainer for that Pitt Panthers team. I can't remember what you were doing back then.
That's right. Third string QB. I had a lot of time. Because it was like behind Marino was Rick Tricano, and it was like, I'm not going to get any. I can also do this for you, Coach Sherrill. So, yeah.
And that's what I've always loved about you. You do what's best for the team.
Multitask, right.
When
cracking pineapples. Like, Marino, you don't have time for this. Let me help you out, friend.
You're like Gallagher on the sideline, but with pineapples. Going into that year, Elway was 1, but Marino was 2. Like, he was going to be that second guy. And then the season plays out. He has a terrible, dreadful year to the point where they opened investigations on whether or not he was on cocaine.
People called professional football teams, called my house to talk to my old man to ask after whether or not these rumors were true. That's true. We were getting calls at the house. I don't remember. There were 2 teams that called the house to talk to my old man to say, like, what can you tell us, Doc, about these rumors? Because my father was the general practitioner. He wasn't the orthopedist, like on the sideline, like, I think that you tore your ACL, kid. Right. He wasn't that guy. He was like, let me give you your physical and make sure you don't got anything weird on your lungs, kind of thing.
Right. To the point he still won the MVP. I think of the Senior Bowl that year, Senior Bowl or Hula Bowl, one of them. He won the MVP of that. So he was still obviously pretty good despite his regular season being bad. That was Sam Howell this year. Sam Howell was this year's Marino. He was
He was the
guy.
I swear to Jesus, I was thinking about this just yesterday, that Sam Howell, because I'm doing this Dynasty League fantasy thing right now where we have to draft the rookies right now. And Sam Howell is the guy I took for like, you think Carson Wentz, this is it? Now it's going to work out for him in our nation's capital. Now he's going to turn the corner, another number 2. Sam Howell is in a great spot to thrive. Boy, do I agree with you on that one. My prejudice against him is that when he has his helmet on, he is a pigskin doppelganger of Baker Mayfield. Too much. But yeah. I think he's going to throw. Boy, I hear your noise, man.
I mean, you go back a year, and Sam Howell was the first or second pick, depending on how much you like Spencer Rattler. Now, obviously, things change. You can't be beholden to takes from 2 years ago. However, you shouldn't throw them out entirely either. He lost his entire offense. Both running backs and both top receivers were drafted before his last year at UNC. And then he has a down year. He wasn't even that terrible. He just wasn't the best quarterback in the nation. That wasn't enough for me. I was shocked at his slide. And I think he was the 4th or 5th guy taken, a la Marino in 83. So if I'm going to draw parallels to that draft, it wouldn't just be as simple as let me take the Pitt guy and keep him in Pittsburgh. I think it's, who was overlooked based on having a down year coming into the draft? I think that was Howell.
Provincially, in the afterglow of the send-off for Roethlisberger and the good feelings, not about even not singularly, at least, the Hall of Fame quarterback, but a celebration of the sports town was really satisfying. Even from here, in my perch in Los Angeles, I could feel the pride in Pittsburgh and what it meant and everything else, the franchise and the sports town and all of that. I love the Pickett pick spiritually. But the Steelers are so closed off. Nothing gets out of that building,
Right.
and any rumors you hear are jive by definition. The whispers are almost always just a bunch of pap. But I do think they liked Howell, and I wouldn't have been surprised if Pickett, or for whatever reason, didn't work out, if they had figured out a way to trade back at the end of the first round to get Sam Howell. But either way, I hear your noise completely on that. And yeah, I do think that the Rooneys are, based on my remarks about provincial pride, are aware of the Marino that Dan Rooney wanted Marino, and it didn't work out. I think it was kind of a cross-generational make good on that. I just don't. I think it puts a lot of pressure on the kid. But
tremendous. You have to be Dan Marino.
Right. Just do that. He's also 41 years old, though, or whatever. And people keep talking about his small hands and how old he is. Like, does it make a difference? If he plays for a decade, he'll be 35. Is that right. Too old to play pro football? I don't think so. Anyway, listen. You're getting too old listening to me flap my gums. What a time is always.
I brought it up.
What a journey. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Spaghetti gets upset, though, when I get sucked into Steelers conversation. It's not hard to do for me. But anyway, listen, like I say, muzzle tov. It's a great achievement that you got through the East. You earned it. Yes, Chris Middleton was out, but like my favorite football coach, John Harbaugh, always says, no one's going to feel bad for you. So there's no reason to lick your wounds. Everybody has injuries, and nobody is, if you get over the hump, no one's going to remember. Like, here's what Bucks fans are doing right now. Like, yeah, but everybody knows that, like I am with the Penguins. Like, if Sidney Crosby doesn't get hurt, they move on in the first round. Like, nobody cares, and no one will remember that except your fan base. No one's going to look back. So no reason to feel any pangs of guilt or otherwise. Enjoy it. These are the good times to have your team in the big spot there. Hope you get over the hump, and let's catch up in summertime, shall we? And let's have a good movie conversation.
Oh, I'm always ready for that. You know that. Always. Thank you for having me on. It's a blast to see your beautiful mug smiling back at me.
I know my haircuts that I've been giving myself for 2 years now are getting worse, not better. Maybe I just don't got the gift. I don't know. Sorry you have to endure that.
It's not for everyone.
No, I'm starting to look like that congressman who cleaned his gun last week. Like that, got that weird, very short on this, like, it ain't right. But anyhow, all right, there he goes, everybody. The great Mick Man. Track him down on Barstool, one of the great writers out there.